What's going on, guys? SasDood here. You can just call me Saz. I hope everyone is having a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious day. Today is another dude talk, or this week, rather, is another dude talk. And this dude talk is centered on little girls in horror games and movies, just horror media in general, right? And this was supposed to be a video back in October, but I switched this video idea for my Let the Right One In book talk, right? And this was also supposed to be my first dude talk, but the sword and sorcery naming and design conventions was easier and faster to write about, so that dude talk came out first. But originally, this was supposed to be my first dude talk. And like the title says, and like I just said, this is about little girls in horror games and horror movies, particularly those two. This became an idea in my head after watching a bunch of these types of horror movies where there's like a little girl horror villain. And I recently did buy the Fear Collection First Encounter Assault Recon collection off of Steam for like $11, and I got all the games and all the DLCs. And I finished the first game. I also want to say that, Eveline from like Resident Evil 7 has kind of become the mainstay in my mind when it comes to these types of characters, and when it comes to these types of representations of little girl horror villains in games and movies. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, and I want to talk about them specifically being, the role of a villain, because it's a generally popular choice for a lot of horror games and a lot of film directors everywhere. And so I want to list off some characters first. Uh, some characters I know, some characters I don't, just to get like a baseline of where my knowledge is at and the types of characters I know. So obviously, like I said, Eveline from Resident Evil 7. Great game, I think. It's an okay game. I prefer the older games, but Resident Evil 7 is a good game. Alma from Fear. She's a very mainstream example from early on in like gaming history that I know of and that a lot of people know of. Reagan from The Exorcist, which I thought was an okay movie. I didn't think it was worth all the hype and things like that, but it was an okay movie. Rhoda Penmark from Bad Seed. I've seen the trailer of it. It's like a very old, like 1950s film, black and white film. I don't think I'll watch it, but she seems interesting. Maybe I'll watch it. We have my favorite. We got Esther. So I've got Esther right here. I got Esther from Orphan. So this is quite possibly my second like favorite representation of like a little girl horror villain character, and she's a crazy girl. uh, Aside from Eveline, right? She's like my second favorite, or she might be my favorite. Who knows? I haven't really thought about it that much. We have Samara Morgan from the American version of Ring. We have Lilith from Case 39, which surprisingly is kind of a mediocre film, to be honest, but it's got like a really heavy hitting cast for such a random film from the early 2000s, right? You've got the Little Sisters from Bioshock, which they used to scare me a lot as a kid, and I would always try to save them when I was a kid. I would never like try to take the essence from them to level up my abilities, but they kind of belong on the list. They kind of don't. It's a little like uh, their pick here is a little bit contentious because they're not actually evil. They're being forced to by whatever his name is, Adam or whatever his name is. I don't know his name, but I'll still put them in here. We have Alessa Gillespie from Silent Hill. I don't know how you pronounce the last name. Quite another iconic little girl horror villain. Everyone knows Silent Hill. Everyone knows the story of Alessa, right? Another very iconic horror girl character, little girl character. And I'm going to throw in a haymaker here. We have Betty from Fallout 3, right? A lot of people don't remember her, I think, but it's a guy, and he puts you in that that like simulation, right? and it's kind of scary seeing her and how like murderous she is, or he is technically. So she, right, quote unquote. It's a very memorable mission. You could say some of the girl characters from Rule of Rose. I do want to play Rule of Rose, but I do not. I have not played it yet, so I can't say much about that. We also have Eli from Let the Right One In, which is kind of another contentious pick, more so than the Little Sisters from BioShock, but I decided to put her in here as well. But we can leave her out. We can leave her out, and we can leave the Rule of Rose characters out, right? To be honest, it's kind of a small list, even when you account for both games and movie media. You get some old horror posts about it, some Reddit and forum posts when I was Googling this topic, and it's kind of a popular topic, right? And it's quite a common trope of the little girl with supernatural powers, or in this case of Esther from Orphan, played by the wonderful Isabel Furman. She's a normal human with seemingly adult-like strength, right? And I want to dive into why is like the little white girl such a prevalent horror villain. I think the reasoning is simple. Horror is always about subverting expectations, and what easier expectation or stereotype to subvert other than the innocent young little girl trope, usually seen as harmless and in need of protection. The horror trope converts him into, a human being or a supernatural being capable of everything from magic, hallucinations, telekinesis, mind powers, shape shifting, etc., etc. It's like a very easy writing room. Let me lower the camera a little bit, move it over. It's a very easy writing room trope for them to add in, and so they don't have to worry about things like continuity or like a grounded feel. It's also easy to suspend your disbelief when a little girl has like that sort of supernatural power, and it makes your character feel powerless, right? It flips the dynamic of the powerful protagonist or movie, game protagonist or movie protagonist or side characters, right? Flipping the dynamic of that, of the powerful protagonist and the scared, weak, little innocent girl, right? It also strikes a fear into the viewer and the video gamer because of that subversion of expectation and usually our feeling of control and power fantasy, right? We project our own ideas, our own experiences, our own fears into the movie character or the game character. Even if the movie character, game character has a sense of self and they have like a very strong character identity, we still go out of our way to kind of project ourselves as that character or think that we are that character, right? We feel scared when they're scared, and we feel hurt when they're hurt. And this is where the gaming media excels in, right? Because you feel everything they're feeling basically because you're controlling them. And it works better, I think, in video games than in movies, but it works both ways, right? We want to protect that innocence that's been perverted by evil, right? And I think it's quite an effective trope, and it's certainly influenced my design of my newest Conan Exile character. I usually I was going for like a she barbarian character, right, with my first character, and I was like, well, I want kind of a juxtaposition, and I was like, well, I really like Eveline and these types of like little girl villain characters who have supernatural powers, and I was like, well, why in Conan we have sword and sorcery, and sorcery in that world in Hyboria is very powerful. It's not like you're just throwing fireballs everywhere, easy peasy, like in stuff like Elder Scrolls or other things like that. It's a dark, powerful force that you have to spend years and decades and hundreds of years. And I thought it was just a perfect fit for what I wanted to do with the character, because she's like very Eveline-like with her appearance and her powers in the Hyboria world. But mainly it's just a nice juxtaposition, right? She's small and menacing, but also holding a deep power within. I'm a very big fan of these like big contrasts in character designs, mainly because I'm not very subtle when it comes to like character designs and stuff like that. I'm not, a master character designer, creator. I kind of just, go with the flow, things like that. I don't put much thought into it, but I thought it'd be a thing to talk about here. Now that I talked about the who's and the whys of this topic, I kind of want to talk a little bit about the design. Most designs are stripped straight from like the ring version or the ringu version, I think they call it in Japan. We have Sadako, right? She's got the long black hair covering her face. She's got the white skin. Usually it's like waterlogged or bloated. It's like a dark blue from being in the well, from being drowned in the well, I believe is the story there. She has the unnatural movements. She has like the one eye covered by her hair, which I took like a screenshot of my character, and I drew her like that, which was it's like a really cool design trope, having like the one hair over the eye for horror characters. I really like that, and Eveline really embodies that as well from RE7. The unnatural powers of Sadako and the unnatural movements, right, or the noises she makes, right, and that's typically what you would what anyone would think of when you think of like a little girl horror villain is Sadako, because she's penetrated the modern interpretation of that, and she's basically the originator of that design trope, right? Ask anybody and they'll typically say, oh, I know the girl from Ring, or I think, is there a girl character in The Grudge? Are they different, Grudge and The Ring? I think they're different, right? Anyways, this design is the same for the American Ring version with Samara Morgan. A more modern and familiar design would probably be Eveline from Resident Evil 7. Dressed in black boots, black long sleeve shirt with like a sort of like little dress that goes down to like a little below her knees. She has like shoulder length hair. She has a lot of design similarities, obviously, with Sadako, because Capcom's a Japanese studio and Sadako is a Japanese property. So I really like the American twist they put on Eveline from a Japanese perspective. I'm not a big fan of Japanese and Japanese, takes on Japanese topics. I'm a big fan of Japanese topics or takes on American topics and mythology. And I like the other way around, with American takes on Japanese topics, or just, it doesn't even have to be Japanese, just any sort of juxtaposition of topics, right? And like I said, Eveline, she's a white girl, and she's got black hair over her eyes, superpowers, hair, knee-length dress, etc., right? We also have Alma from Fear. Fear is a wonderful series, and Alma is a crazy character, right? Long black hair, she's got a red dress, and she's arguably more scary, but objectively, the things that's happened to her and the things that she does to you in the video games is, I think, objectively more horrifying in context of her birth and the situations that the game describes, right? And that's like the prototypical design, right? Is that the right word? Prototypical? I'm not sure. I'll just say typical design. The other designs are a little bit more cutesy. They usually wear dresses with bows. They got ribbons in their hair, and maybe they have some sort of like, like Esther here. She's got like the ribbons in her hair. Usually shoulder length hair. She's wearing a dress. A far more cutesy design, and you can see that with Esther from Orphan or the little sisters from BioShock, right? They dress up kind of like princess-like. So it's cute on the exterior, but it's very deadly on the interior, while you have, Alma and Sadako and Eveline, who are more so just not so cute when it comes to the appearance, but more scary-like when it comes to the appearance, right? And so it's either very cutesy dresses or a more scary, more subdued design, right? You don't see a not a mixture of the two, but any differential of the two. You don't see a lot of different designs than those two, right? And so I want to go into a short side tangent about how we are severely lacking in diversification of different types of little girl characters that I've noticed, and it's, you know, a little weird to say, right? But like I said, the genre is pretty set in stone when it comes to these characters. We do have some Asian representation, the originator, I think, which is, you know, Sadako. But besides like the white representation and the Asian representation, right? Eveline and Samara Morgan. They're white, they're American, things like that. But we have Sadako who's Japanese, and we have the Grudge who's Japanese, right? But as weird as it is for me to point out, I'd like to see what a filmmaker or a designer can do when it comes to characters of a different skin color or a different tone, different race, and just different mythology overall, right? Like I said, I like the juxtaposition between different cultures' takes on each other's myths and legends and stuff like that. So that'd be interesting to see like a little girl horror villain in like Africa or like a European setting, or maybe we can go into like some sort of like Asiatic country that's not Japan. You can maybe see some Chinese horror girls, right? And I'm pretty sure those exist. I just can't think of any, nor that I have seen any. But like I said, I just like to see more stuff with it, a more diverse cast of little girl horror villains. Maybe there is some more diversification when it comes to books and movies and games, but I haven't seen any, nor that I know of any. But I think that when it comes to the handling of these types of tropes and when it comes to like the diversification of these topics, I do think BioShock handled the little sisters very well, and I do think Eveline is handled very well when it comes to her, you know, spoiler alert, I'm going to spoil it. So if you don't know anything about Resident Evil 7, I'm going to spoil a little bit, and that, you know, Eveline, the little girl, which doesn't actually exist, she's like a figment, right? And then the grandma, the old person juxtaposition, I think that's very, very well handled. Alma from Fear is also very well handled. How she appears to you, she's kind of like Eveline, right? Where she appears to you in different forms, and well, unlike Eveline, Alma, you know, seduces you and things like that. But like I said, that's a whole can of worms we can get into. I don't think I'll get into, maybe in the future, but that's a whole different can of worms, right? But I'm sure I missed a lot of like movies, games, and books of the like. So if you have any sort of like a media that I can watch, I could read, I can play, where it has, you know, a well-defined like horror girl villain, little girl horror villain, feel free to let me know in the comments, because I would like to explore this topic further, because it's kind of, I'm usually not a big horror guy, but I think my favorite genre of horror is the little girl villain trope, right? And it seems to have some sort of popularity as well, because I went searching online for some movies in October, and I went searching online for a little bit when I was making in the topic, or in the process of making this script here, this video, and it seems to be not a super popular topic, but it does seem to be a topic with some regularity that pops up when it comes to the horror space. So I thought it was something interesting to talk about. But anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you wish to support my artwork and my videos, all my social media and payment tipping links are in my profile. More videos, more artwork, more dude talks will come regardless. Goodbye for now, guys.